The story of Breaking Bad begins with a simple man named Walter White who works as a high school chemistry teacher in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He is quite humble and living an ordinary life with his wife Skylar White and teenage son Walter Jr., who has cerebral palsy. Walter's days are filled with teaching board students and managing financial struggles while Skylar tries her best to support the family. Before we move forward, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more detailed movie explanations and stay connected with us for upcoming parts of Breaking Bad explanation. Walter's life takes a dark and unexpected turn when he is diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. This news hits him like a thunderbolt, and suddenly his world starts falling apart. He realizes that his family's financial condition is weak and there will be no one to take care of them after his death. The weight of this truth pushes Walter to make a life changing decision that transforms his destiny forever. One day, while accompanying his brother in law, Hank Schrader, who works for the DEA, Walter witnesses a meth lab bust. This incident sparks something deep inside him as he sees the amount of money involved in the drug trade. He realizes that his knowledge of chemistry could be used to make high quality methamphetamine. That moment becomes the seed for an idea that will turn a mild mannered teacher into one of the most feared drug lords in America. Haunted by his illness and his desire to leave something behind for his family, Walter contacts a former student named Jesse Pinkman. Jesse is a small time meth cook and drug dealer who barely manages to escape from the DEA raid Walter saw. Walter proposes a shocking partnership to Jesse that they should cook meth together and split the profits. At first, Jesse laughs at the idea but soon realizes that Walter is serious and that his chemistry skills could make them rich. They buy an old RV and drive into the desert where they begin cooking crystal meth. Walter's chemistry expertise produces a product that is pure and unlike anything on the market. The crystal blue color of their meth becomes their signature, and word spreads fast among dealers and users. Jesse is amazed by the quality, while Walter feels a strange sense of pride in his creation. For the first time, he feels in control of his life. However, things do not go as smoothly as planned. Jesse tries to sell the product through his usual contacts but ends up attracting the attention of dangerous people. Two local dealers, Crazy 8 and Emilio, demand to know who made the new blue meth. Jesse panics and tells them about his new partner. Walter and Jesse soon find themselves in a deadly situation when the dealers force them to cook in the desert RV. Using his quick thinking and chemical knowledge, Walter creates a poisonous gas that kills Emilio and leaves Crazy 8 unconscious. This is Walter's first real step into the dark world of crime. He returns home shaken and terrified, realizing what he has just done. But deep down, something inside him begins to change. The fear that once controlled him slowly turns into confidence and a growing hunger for power. As Walter and Jesse try to clean up the mess, Walter stores Crazy 8 in his basement, intending to decide later what to do with him. He tries to convince himself that he is not a killer, that he is just doing what is necessary to protect his family. But as days pass and Crazy 8 regains consciousness, Walter discovers that the man plans to kill him if released. This realization forces Walter to make a brutal choice. In a heartbreaking scene, Walter strangles Crazy 8 with a bike lock. The act marks the end of the old Walter White and the birth of his criminal alter ego. He cries uncontrollably after the murder, unable to believe what he has become. But once again, he hides the truth from his family, pretending that everything is normal while burying the evidence of his new life. Skylar starts noticing strange changes in her husband's behavior. Walter becomes distant and secretive. He disappears for long hours and gives vague excuses about where he has been. Skylar begins to suspect something is wrong and starts asking questions, but Walter refuses to open up. Meanwhile, Jesse also struggles with guilt and paranoia after the murders. Jesse tries to sell their remaining meth but faces violent street dealers who demand more product. He realizes that the drug business is far more dangerous than he expected. Despite his fear, he continues working with Walter because the money is too good to ignore. Walter, meanwhile, starts to feel a dangerous thrill in living this double life as both a teacher and a drug producer. Walter tells himself that he is doing all of this for his family, that every lie and every risk is justified, but deep inside he begins to crave the power and respect that his normal life never gave him. His once gentle nature starts fading as his new persona slowly takes control. The man who once obeyed every rule now breaks them without hesitation. Soon Hank Schrader unknowingly becomes the biggest threat to Walter's secret life. As a DEA agent, Hank is determined to find the new meth cook who is flooding the streets with the pure blue product. Ironically, he often shares his progress with Walter, not realizing that the man he is chasing is sitting right next to him at family dinners. Walter listens carefully, always a step ahead, hiding his true identity. Meanwhile, Skylar becomes more suspicious when she finds strange behavior in Walter's phone and notices his growing absences. She worries about his health, but Walter keeps her in the dark, pretending everything is fine. The burden of lies begins to weigh heavily on him, but he continues his secret mission to secure money before his cancer gets worse. Walter and Jesse decide to expand their operation. They find a distributor named Tuco Salamanca who is known for his violent temper and involvement in the drug trade. Jesse arranges a meeting, but Tuco beats him badly and refuses to pay. When Walter finds out, he decides to handle it himself in his own terrifying way. He walks into Tuco's office carrying a bag that he claims is full of meth. When Tuco mocks him, Walter throws a crystal on the floor, causing a massive explosion. Everyone in the room panics as Walter calmly reveals that it is fulminated mercury, a highly explosive chemical. This fearless act earns Tuco's respect and he agrees to buy Walter's product. This is the moment Walter embraces his new identity fully. He introduces himself as Heisenberg, a name that will soon become feared in the criminal world. The transformation from a dying teacher to a ruthless drug maker is now complete. Heisenberg is born and the journey into darkness has just begun. As Walter and Jesse start delivering to Tuco, their profits skyrocket. Walter starts feeling powerful, like he has finally taken control of his destiny, but his family begins to suffer the consequences. Skylar grows more suspicious, and Walter Jr. feels confused about his father's strange behavior. Walter's lies begin to form cracks in his family's trust. At the same time, Walter's health worsens. The stress of his double life takes a toll on his body, and he collapses during a family gathering. The doctors suggest costly treatments that the family cannot afford. Walter secretly uses the drug money to pay the bills while pretending the money came from friends. This marks another layer of deception in his web of lies. Hank continues his investigation, unaware that the meth cook he's hunting is his own brother in law. He talks about the growing meth empire of a mysterious man known as Heisenberg. Walter listens silently, feeling both proud and terrified at the same time. The thrill of being smarter than everyone around him begins to intoxicate him, but Jesse starts having second thoughts about their partnership. He feels the moral weight of their crimes and wants out. Walter, however, manipulates him into staying, promising that they are close to securing enough money to walk away forever. Jesse trusts him, but the path they have chosen is already too dark to escape easily. As Tuco becomes more unpredictable and violent, Walter and Jesse realize they are in grave danger. Tuco's temper leads to brutal outbursts, and he starts threatening them over minor issues. Walter plans to escape the deal, but Tuco kidnaps them instead, taking them to a remote desert hideout. The tension reaches its peak as Walter and Jesse fear for their lives. Tuco becomes paranoid, thinking someone from his crew betrayed him. Walter secretly plots to poison him using ricin, a deadly toxin made from beans. But before he can execute the plan, DEA agents close in on Tuco's location. A massive shootout breaks out, killing Tuco and ending the immediate threat. Walter and Jesse barely escape and return home shaken. Walter pretends he had a mental breakdown to explain his disappearance, while Jesse hides from the police. The experience changes them both, making them realize there is no going back. Walter's double life deepens as he continues lying to Skylar and Hank. His hunger for control and money keeps pushing him forward, even though he tells himself it's for his family. The man who once feared death now feels invincible as Heisenberg. Part 1 ends here with Walter White standing on the edge of morality and madness. His transformation has begun, and the line between right and wrong is fading fast. In the next part, we will see how Heisenberg rises higher and how Walter's choices lead to devastating consequences. After the shocking events with Tuco Salamanca, Walter White and Jesse Pinkman are deeply shaken, but they realize that survival has now become part of their new reality. The fear of getting caught or killed has turned into a strange motivation, pushing them deeper into the criminal world. Walter returns home acting as if nothing happened, but his lies grow heavier with every passing day. Skylar becomes increasingly suspicious about Walter's frequent disappearances and strange mood swings. She knows something is terribly wrong, but he refuses to share the truth. Meanwhile, Walter's brother-in-law Hank continues to celebrate Tuco's death with the DEA, not realizing that his own brother-in-law was right in the middle of the chaos. Walter tells himself that he is done with the drug business, that he only wanted enough money for his family's security. But as time passes, the hunger inside him refuses to stop. He begins to feel addicted to the thrill of power and control. The chemistry teacher has now become a master of manipulation and strategy. Jesse tries to start a new life after Tuco's death. He rents a small house and attempts to stay low, but the guilt of their crimes keeps haunting him. He starts using the product they made and falls deeper into addiction. Walter worries about him not out of love but because Jesse is a key part of his operation. Walter meets with a lawyer named Saul Goodman after Jesse gets into trouble with the police. Saul is a smooth talking criminal lawyer who helps people get away with illegal activities for a price. Walter sees potential in Saul and soon he becomes their legal and business advisor. This marks the beginning of one of the most iconic partnerships in the series. Saul introduces Walter and Jesse to a new distributor who can buy their meth in large quantities without street level risks. This mysterious figure is named Gus Fring, a calm and intelligent businessman who runs a fast food chain called Los Pollos Hermanos as a cover for his drug empire. Gus is the opposite of Tuco, precise, careful, and professional. When Walter first meets Gus, he is impressed by his discipline and calm demeanor. Gus sees potential in Walter's blue meth and offers him a chance to cook on a larger scale. However, Gus makes it clear that he only works with people who are stable and trustworthy. Walter hides his violent past and presents himself as a professional chemist seeking a business deal. Meanwhile, Skylar begins investigating on her own and discovers more strange signs like unexplained money and lies about Walter's second phone. The pressure on Walter's family life increases as his web of deception grows. He becomes more aggressive and defensive every time Skylar questions him. As Walter's cancer temporarily goes into remission, his family hopes for a normal life again, but he feels trapped. The disease that once motivated him to cook meth is no longer a threat, but now his addiction to power has replaced it. He begins to justify every crime by telling himself that he is doing it for his family even though his actions are destroying them. Jesse continues to spiral out of control. He starts a relationship with his neighbor Jane Margolis, who is also struggling with addiction. Their love gives Jesse temporary happiness, but it also leads both of them down a dangerous path. Jane introduces Jesse to heroin, and soon both of them become completely addicted. Walter becomes furious when he finds out Jesse is wasting their money and losing focus. He confronts Jesse and tries to get him back on track because Gus is offering a massive deal for a steady supply of meth. Walter's greed begins to outweigh his emotions, and he sees Jesse as a business asset rather than a friend. The operation under Gus's guidance becomes more professional. Walter and Jesse start cooking in a state of the art underground lab provided by Gus. Walter feels powerful and respected as Heisenberg, while Jesse struggles to keep up due to his addiction. The difference between them grows wider as Walter turns colder and more calculated. Skylar finally confronts Walter after discovering undeniable evidence of his secret life. She demands to know the truth, but Walter refuses to confess. He insists that everything he does is for the family. But Skylar begins to see that this is no longer about love or protection, it is about pride and control. Jane and Jesse's addiction soon turns into tragedy. One night, Walter visits Jesse's apartment to reconcile and finds both of them passed out after using heroin. While trying to wake Jessie, he accidentally causes Jane to roll onto her back and start choking on her vomit. Walter hesitates, torn between saving her and walking away. In a heartbreaking moment, he chooses to let her die. The next morning, Jesse wakes up devastated by Jane's death. He blames himself completely and spirals into a deep depression. Walter pretends to comfort him, but inside he knows he caused the tragedy. This moment marks another irreversible step in Walter's transformation into a man with no moral boundaries. Jesse disappears for a while, unable to face reality. Walter lies to everyone, including himself, about what happened. Skylar grows distant, while Hank gets closer to discovering Heisenberg's operation. The DEA intensifies their search as the blue meth becomes more widespread across the state. Gus sees Walter's potential and decides to invest heavily in him. He offers Walter a multi-million-dollar deal to cook full-time in a hidden industrial lab. Walter initially refuses, but the temptation is too strong to resist. He agrees to work with Gus but hides it from Jesse, creating more tension between them. Meanwhile, Hank continues investigating street level dealers and tracks down connections that lead closer to Jesse. A shootout occurs with two dealers, and Hank barely survives an ambush meant to silence him. The attack shakes both Hank and Walter's family deeply, but Walter remains calm, outwardly pretending to be supportive while hiding his guilt. Walter's ego begins to grow uncontrollably. He no longer wants to work under Gus's control. He starts seeing himself as a king who deserves respect and fear. Jesse, meanwhile, slowly recovers from his addiction and learns the truth about Jane's death, which makes him hate Walter even more. As the tension between Gus and Walter rises, it becomes clear that a deadly confrontation is inevitable. Walter realizes that Gus sees him as a liability and begins plotting his own survival. He uses his knowledge of chemistry once again, not just for science but for destruction. Skylar becomes more desperate to protect her children from Walter. She finally learns about the drug money and the scale of his crimes. Instead of turning him in, she decides to stay silent and help him launder the money through a car wash business. Her decision marks the point where the entire family becomes trapped in Walter's criminal world. Gus continues to tighten control over Walter's operation and tries to replace him with another chemist. Walter discovers this and decides to strike first. He secretly teams up with Jesse, once again convincing him that Gus will kill them both once they outlive their usefulness. The fragile partnership between Walter and Jesse is reborn, but now built on manipulation and fear. Walter devises a deadly plan to eliminate Gus using the same ruthless logic that once saved his life. His transformation from a desperate teacher to a criminal mastermind is now complete. He no longer hesitates to kill anyone who stands in his way. He has become the embodiment of power and corruption. As part 2 ends, we see Walter's moral decay reaching new depths. The man who once cried over taking a life now kills without remorse. His empire is growing, but so are the consequences waiting to strike. The world of Breaking Bad is about to explode with chaos and revenge. The story of Breaking Bad now moves into its darkest and most intense phase. Walter White has fully embraced his Heisenberg identity, and there is no trace left of the gentle chemistry teacher he once was. His partnership with Gus Fring has made him wealthy and powerful, but it has also placed him in constant danger. Every decision he makes now carries deadly consequences. Walter continues to cook in the high tech underground lab provided by Gus. He becomes obsessed with perfection and efficiency, while Jesse struggles emotionally after learning more about Walter's manipulation. Jesse starts to question everything, wondering whether Walter truly cares for him or only uses him as a pawn in his power game. Meanwhile, Skylar gets deeper into the money laundering business. She buys the car wash where Walter once worked part time and begins using it to clean their illegal profits. Though she hates what Walter has become, she feels trapped by fear and guilt. Their marriage becomes cold and tense, filled with lies and resentment. Hank Schrader, still recovering from the brutal attack, begins to connect more clues about the mysterious Heisenberg. He spends countless hours analyzing evidence and studying the blue meth distribution patterns. Slowly, he begins to suspect that the drug kingpin he is hunting might be closer than anyone thinks. Gus Fring grows wary of Walter's unpredictable behavior. He realizes that Walter's ego and defiance could become a serious problem. Gus begins grooming another chemist, Gail Boeticher, to replace Walter. Gale is intelligent and obedient, which makes him the perfect candidate to continue the operation without conflict. When Walter learns about this plan, he panics. He knows that once Gale is ready, Gus will have no reason to keep him alive. Walter tells Jesse that they must act before Gus kills them both. In a desperate move, he convinces Jesse to do something horrifying. Jesse must kill Gale to ensure that Gus still needs Walter alive. The scene is one of the most intense moments in the story. Jesse hesitates, terrified and emotional, but Walter's manipulation pushes him to pull the trigger. Gale is shot dead in his apartment, marking another irreversible crime that chains Jesse and Walter together in guilt and fear. Gus now has no choice but to keep Walter alive to continue production. After Gale's death, Gus becomes colder and more ruthless. He begins planning revenge but hides it behind his calm, businesslike appearance. He replaces his loyal guards and silently prepares for a deadly game. Walter knows that Gus is too smart and that sooner or later he will strike back. Walter tries to act normal around his family, but paranoia begins consuming him. He installs cameras around his house and constantly looks over his shoulder. Skylar notices his increasing madness and realizes that the man she married no longer exists. Heisenberg has completely taken over Walter's soul. Jesse is haunted by guilt for killing Gale. He turns to drugs again and starts hanging out with dangerous people to numb his pain. Gus tries to take advantage of Jesse's broken state by pulling him away from Walter. He treats Jesse with kindness and respect, making him feel valued. Slowly, Jesse starts to trust Gus more than Walter. Walter realizes that he is losing control over Jesse and becomes desperate. He starts planting doubts in Jesse's mind about Gus's intentions. At the same time, Walter begins plotting a deadly plan to eliminate Gus before Gus eliminates him. The war between the two brilliant men turns into a psychological chess game. Hank's investigation brings him closer to uncovering the true identity of Heisenberg. He begins suspecting that the blue meth might be connected to Gus Fring's restaurant chain. Hank follows the clues relentlessly and starts putting together the pieces. Walter panics every time Hank mentions Gus's name but hides his fear behind fake support. Gus decides to separate Walter from Jesse permanently. He orders Jesse to cook with Gail's replacement once the lab is rebuilt. Walter realizes that his time is running out. He starts gathering resources and chemicals to prepare for a final confrontation. The gentle teacher who once used science to educate now uses it to kill. In a shocking move, Walter arranges for Gus's trusted enforcer Tyrus to die by poisoning him indirectly through a plan that also threatens innocent people. Walter's actions show how far he has fallen. He no longer sees lives as valuable only as obstacles or tools to his success. Walter's plan to kill Gus takes shape when he convinces Hector Salamanca, an old enemy of Gus, to help him. Hector is confined to a wheelchair and communicates with a bell. Walter knows that Hector hates Gus deeply for killing his family years ago. He manipulates this hatred to set a deadly trap. When Gus visits Hector in the nursing home to confront him one last time, Hector detonates a bomb hidden in his wheelchair. The explosion kills both Hector and Gus in a spectacular and shocking moment. Walter watches from a distance as his greatest rival is destroyed. For the first time, he feels untouchable. After Gus's death, Walter becomes the new king of the meth empire. He tells Skylar coldly that he has won. This statement marks the completion of his transformation. He is no longer a man fighting cancer, but a man consumed by greed and pride. The Heisenberg legend is now in full power. Jesse is unaware of the full truth behind Gus's death and believes Walter's lies once again. Together they take over the meth business completely, but their relationship is now built entirely on deception. Walter uses fear and manipulation to keep Jesse loyal while presenting himself as a protector. Skylar becomes terrified of Walter's growing arrogance. She realizes that he enjoys his criminal life and that he will never stop. She tries to protect her children by keeping them away from him. Walter, however, insists that everything is under control and that the money is for the family's future. The DEA continues investigating even after Gus's death. Hank suspects that the blue meth might still be circulating under a new operator. He starts analyzing clues again, determined to find the real Heisenberg once and for all. Walter laughs at the irony of Hank chasing him unknowingly. As Walter's empire expands, he hires new associates and creates a large scale distribution network. He becomes rich beyond imagination, but the more money he makes, the more paranoid he becomes. The darkness within him continues to grow, and his actions become more ruthless. Jesse starts questioning Walter's decisions again. He begins to realize that every person who comes close to Walter either dies or suffers. The guilt of Gail's murder and Jane's death keeps haunting him. Walter, however, continues to manipulate Jesse emotionally to keep him obedient. Skylar finally breaks down under the weight of Walter's lies. She confronts him about the dangers and the blood on his hands. Walter responds coldly, saying that he is not in danger, that he is the danger. This moment defines Heisenberg completely, showing how far Walter has fallen into delusion and pride. Walter's arrogance becomes his new addiction. He no longer fears death or the law. He begins to enjoy the fear and respect he commands. But beneath his confidence, cracks start to appear as enemies rise from within his own empire. The seeds of his downfall are already planted. As part 3 comes to an end, Walter stands at the peak of power but also at the edge of destruction. His choices have turned him into a monster feared by everyone, even his own family. The story of Breaking Bad is now entering its final and most tragic phase where every action will have a devastating price.